One of the most tragic things I've seen, far more tragic than death itself, is watching people who are alive in body but completely dead in spirit. They walk, talk, breathe, and smile, but inside, nothing, numb, disconnected. It's a kind of emotional extinction that's hard to notice at first, but devastating when it becomes a pattern. And the worst part is we normalize it. We tell ourselves, this is just life. This is adulthood. This is how it is. But is it really? We don't talk enough about emotional death, the kind where you're not buried under dirt, but under disappointment, under the weight of expectations, of heartbreak, failure, loss, and shame, the kind where you stop dreaming, stop feeling, stop showing up. You're still here physically, but the person you used to be, the hopeful version of you, the curious, the courageous version, died somewhere along the way and most people don't even notice it happening. It's slow, quiet, invisible. Sometimes it starts with something small, a missed opportunity, a betrayal, a failed relationship, or maybe life just didn't turn out the way you imagined it would. The job isn't what you hoped. The people around you don't see you. Your voice goes unheard. Your worth feels uncertain. And slowly you start shrinking. You laugh a little less, dream a little less, trust a little less, until one day you're merely surviving, not living. But here's the thing, emotional death is real, yes, but it's not permanent. It's not the end unless you make it so. Unlike physical death, emotional death comes with a door, one you can choose to walk back through. You can come back to life. You can choose to start feeling again. You can choose to rebuild the connection with yourself, even if the world has done everything it could to break it. Let's be honest, coming back to life isn't romantic. It's not a movie montage with music swelling in the background. It's painful, it's messy, it's slow, and most days it feels like you're dragging yourself out of quicksand. But it is possible, and more than that, it is necessary. Because if you don't, if you stay numb, if you stay hidden, if you let the pain win, then you've already surrendered the most precious thing you have, your existence. You see, our culture has become so obsessed with survival that we've forgotten how to live. We wake up, we go to work, we tick boxes, we smile when we need to, and we suppress the rest. We function. But functioning is not living. Existing is not the same as being alive. You don't just deserve to exist, you deserve to feel, to laugh from your gut, to cry deeply, to want things, to chase after them, to fail miserably and still try again. That is what it means to be alive. Sometimes people say, I just don't feel anything anymore. And I want to say this gently, but clearly that's not who you are. That's a signal. That's your soul telling you something needs to change. It's not a personality trait. It's not a permanent condition. It's a defense mechanism. Somewhere along the way, your heart learned it was safer to shut down than to risk more pain. But protection, when prolonged, becomes a prison. And it keeps out not just the bad, but also the good. There's a psychological phenomenon called learned helplessness. When someone experiences enough failure or trauma, they begin to believe that nothing they do will ever change their situation. So they stop trying. They give up. They emotionally disconnect. They die before their death. But here's what the research also says: this can be unlearned. The moment you realize you have agency, the moment you remember that your voice still matters, that your actions still hold weight, that's when the healing begins. There's a philosopher I deeply admire, Søren Kierkegaard, who once wrote that the greatest danger is not that we might die, but that we might go on living in a state of spiritual death. And I believe that's what many of us are fighting, whether we realize it or not. Not death, but the slow erosion of self, the silencing of our inner voice, the dimming of our own light. That's what we must resist with everything we have. So if you're sitting here right now and something in you feels hollow, if you've been moving through your days like a shadow of who you once were, let me remind you, you're not too far gone. You are still here, which means there is still something in you worth fighting for, worth waking up for, even if it's buried under years of silence. Even if you can't name it yet, start small. Speak a truth you've been hiding. Take a risk that scares you. Choose to care, even when it hurts. Choose to feel. Choose to return to yourself. Because the true tragedy is not death itself, it's choosing to abandon life long before it's over. Let's be honest, pain is a universal experience. No one escapes it. It doesn't matter how rich, successful, beautiful, or wise you are, pain finds you. It arrives uninvited in many forms: heartbreak, betrayal, illness, failure, rejection, loss. It shows up in broken dreams, in the silence of loneliness, in the loudness of an anxious mind. And when it hits, it doesn't ask for permission. It just takes off. And it leaves you wondering how you're supposed to go on with so much weight pressing down on your chest. But here's the deeper truth. While pain is inevitable, suffering, prolonged, self-defeating suffering, is often a choice. Now, I know that sounds harsh at first. I'm not saying the pain you've experienced isn't real. I'm not saying it didn't matter. Of course it did. Your story matters. Your wounds matter. But we have to understand the difference between pain, which is a moment, or a series of moments, and suffering, which is what we carry when we don't know how to release it, when we build our identity around it. Pain is what happens to us. Suffering is what we continue to do to ourselves with the memory of that pain. There's a powerful concept in Buddhist philosophy that speaks to this beautifully. It's called the 2 arrows principle. The first arrow is the pain life throws at you, things you cannot control. But the second arrow, that's the one we shoot ourselves with. It's the judgment, the resentment, the self-blame, the constant reliving of the past, the belief that our pain makes us unworthy, broken, or permanently damaged. And that second arrow often causes more harm than the first ever did. I know people who've gone through unthinkable tragedies, and they've managed to transform that pain into power, into purpose. Not because their pain was small, but because they refused to let it become their entire story. And I also know people who've allowed relatively small moments of embarrassment, rejection, disappointment, to paralyze them for years. The difference wasn't in the event. It was in the way they chose to respond to it. You see, we often underestimate the power of choice in moments of pain. We forget that we still get to decide how we respond. Do we collapse? Do we become bitter? Do we close ourselves off to the world? Or do we lean into it? Do we ask, what is this here to teach me? Not because pain is a gift, it's not, but because growth can be. Sometimes the most painful moments are also the most clarifying. They reveal what truly matters. They strip away illusions. They bring us back to ourselves. But only if we let them. Only if we stop trying to escape them, deny them, or suppress them. We live in a world that tells us to distract ourselves from pain, to numb it, to scroll through it, to drink, shop, work, or even joke our way out of it. But pain that is ignored does not go away. It sinks deeper. It takes root. And it shows up in our relationships, our self-image, our choices. If you don't face your pain, you end up feeding it. There's also something else that needs to be said here. Sometimes we hold on to suffering because it gives us a strange sense of identity. It becomes familiar. It becomes who we think we are. I'm the person who was abandoned. I'm the one who failed. I'm the one who always gets hurt. But you are not your pain. You are not your past. Or you are not your worst moment. You are the person who survived it. And that's a very different story. When I say suffering is a choice I don't mean it's easy to let go. I mean it's possible. It begins with awareness. It begins by asking yourself am I adding to my pain right now by holding on to a version of the story that no longer serves me? Am I defining myself by something I was meant to grow through, not get stuck in? This doesn't mean you rush your healing. Healing has no deadline. But it does mean you stop feeding the narrative that keeps you small, helpless, or broken. You stop telling yourself that life ended the day you got hurt. Because it didn't. You're still here. Which means something inside you is still fighting, still hoping, still trying. And that deserves your attention. That deserves your commitment. So here's the invitation when pain shows up. And it will. Don't deny it. Don't drown in it either. Sit with it. Learn from it. Let it shape you but not harden you. Let it deepen your compassion, not your bitterness. And above all, don't make your home in suffering. Pass through it. Don't unpack and stay. Because while pain is something life gives you, suffering is something you either hold or release. And in that choice, right there, you find your power. If there's one thing I've come to believe deeply, not just through study but through experience, it's this: purpose is the oxygen of the soul. You can survive without a lot of things in life. You can survive disappointment, you can survive loneliness, you can survive pain. But it is very, very difficult to survive the feeling that your life has no meaning, that your existence is just a repetition of days without direction, that you're breathing off. But for what? When we lose our sense of purpose, we lose more than motivation. We lose our will. We lose that inner spark that gets us out of bed not just because we have to, but because we want to. because we believe we're here for something greater than simply enduring. And I want to be clear here, purpose doesn't always mean something grand or dramatic. It's not always about changing the world or becoming famous or leaving behind a legacy that's written in books. Sometimes purpose is deeply quiet. Sometimes it's just deciding that your life will stand for something, even if no one else sees it, even if it only impacts the people around you, even if it's just showing up with integrity when no one is clapping. That too is purpose. That too is power. There's a line by Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, that I think about often. He said, "Those who have a why to live can bear almost any woe." He watched people lose everything, family, freedom, dignity, and still survive, still hold on. Not because they were stronger or more fortunate, but because they had a reason to. Something inside them told them, there is still something left for me to do. Oh, we too need that kind of anchor, that sense that we are part of something bigger than our pain, bigger than our circumstances, bigger than ourselves. So the question becomes, what is your why? What is the thing that brings you back to life when everything else feels empty? What is the thing that whispers to you, even on your darkest days, don't give up yet? Maybe your purpose is to create, to write, to paint, to design, to express something the world needs to see. Maybe it's to serve, to help others rise, to give, to teach, to heal. Maybe it's to protect, to lead, to build, to nurture, to inspire. Or maybe, right now, your only purpose is to heal, to rebuild yourself piece by piece, so that one day your story becomes someone else's survival guide. Whatever it is, it matters. And if you haven't found it yet, that doesn't mean it's not there. It just means you haven't looked deep enough. Or maybe you stopped believing you were worthy of it. But I promise you, purpose doesn't show up all at once. It reveals itself through movement, through living, through failing and trying again. It doesn't wait for the perfect moment. It waits for your willingness. And I say that because many people think they have to wait to feel ready. They think they need to heal first, be confident first, be successful first. But purpose doesn't come after clarity. It creates it. Sometimes your purpose is born in the very thing you thought would break you. Sometimes your deepest wound becomes the very place from which you serve the world. I've seen people turn their grief into music, their trauma into advocacy, their loneliness into poetry, their rejection into a platform to speak truth. They didn't wait to be perfect. They showed up as they were. And that act of showing up again and again became their purpose. Let's not pretend it's always obvious. It's not. We live in a world that confuses purpose with productivity. That measures worth in numbers, followers, likes, salaries, degrees. But your purpose has nothing to do with metrics. It has everything to do with meaning. And meaning is something only you can define. If you don't choose your own meaning, someone else will do it for you. The world will assign you a purpose based on what it needs from you, not based on what you are truly meant to become. So you must take that responsibility seriously. You must decide, I am not here just to exist. I am here to contribute, to connect, to grow, to evolve. And don't be afraid if your purpose shifts over time. That's human. That's evolution. You're not meant to stay the same. Your purpose at 20 might not be your purpose at 40. And that's not a failure. That's a sign you're listening to life. So if you're feeling lost, if you're asking yourself, what's the point of all this? Don't retreat. Don't go numb. That question, what's my purpose, is not something to fear. It's the beginning of your becoming. It's the first step toward coming back to life. And don't wait for the answer to arrive in some dramatic cosmic revelation. Instead, start where you are. Start with what you care about. Start with what hurts. Start with what lights you up. Follow the trail of your curiosity and your compassion. That's how you begin to breathe again. Not just with your lungs, but with your soul. One of the most damaging beliefs we can ever carry, often silently, often unconsciously, is the idea that we are our circumstances, that we are no more than the situation we're in, that if we've been abandoned, we are unlovable, that if we've failed, we are failures, that if we've been broken, we are forever broken. And slowly, without even realizing it, we stop seeing ourselves as someone who has been through something and start believing we are that thing. This is how identity gets trapped in pain, not because of what happened to us, but because of how we begin to internalize it. The job you lost becomes your worth. The relationship that ended becomes your definition of love. The diagnosis becomes your destiny. And suddenly, everything you believe you can do or be shrinks to fit inside the box your circumstances have built around you. But let me ask you this, if your environment had the power to define you, wouldn't everyone in the same environment end up the same? Why then do some people rise out of poverty while others stay stuck? Why do some people turn heartbreak into art while others turn it into fear? It's not about what's around you. It's about what's within you. Your circumstances may shape your experience, but they do not shape your worth. They may influence your journey, but they do not dictate your destination. You are not where you were born. You are not what you've lost. You are not what someone did to you. You are not even what you did when you didn't know better. You are what you choose to become in response to those things. But I'll be honest, separating yourself from your circumstances takes more than just positive thinking. It requires deep work. It requires stepping outside of your own narrative long enough to see that what you've been telling yourself might not be true. It requires asking, is this belief helping me grow or keeping me small? Because your identity is not a fixed thing. It's not a label you wear for life. It's something you evolve, something you reclaim. And that starts the moment you stop letting your surroundings or your past decide who you get to be. Let me tell you something I've learned from watching people rise, really rise, from unthinkable conditions. It's not about resources. It's not about luck. It's about refusal. A refusal to let pain be the final word. A refusal to let fear write the ending. A refusal to accept that the person you were at your lowest moment is the whole of who you are. You can acknowledge your circumstances without submitting to them. You can be honest about your pain without building a home inside it. You can feel stuck and still choose to move. There's this idea in psychology called self-efficacy, the belief that you have the ability to influence outcomes in your life. And it turns out that belief is one of the strongest predictors of resilience. Not talent, not intelligence, not even support. It's that internal conviction that says, I may not control everything, but I control something. And sometimes that something is enough to change everything. If you wake up every day and tell yourself, this is just how life is, nothing will ever change, then your actions will reflect that. You'll stop trying, you'll stop growing, you'll start shrinking to fit inside your pain. But if you tell yourself, this is where I am, not who I am, you begin to reclaim your agency. And that small shift in perspective can open the door to an entirely different life. The truth is, the world will try to define you by your most visible traits, by your scars, your status, your body, your income, your last mistake. But you are not required to accept those definitions. You are allowed to outgrow them. You are allowed to contradict them. You are allowed to be more. I say this not to dismiss real struggle, but to remind you that your struggle is not a ceiling. It is a season, and seasons change. The question is, are you willing to stop identifying with the winter long enough to let the spring arrive? Your circumstances may explain your pain, but they do not explain away your potential. Pain is not a prophecy. Struggle is not a sentence. And just because your environment has been limiting doesn't mean your life must be. So the next time you hear that voice inside you whispering, this is just who I am now, pause. Ask yourself, is that really true? Or is it just familiar? Because sometimes the only thing keeping us stuck is a story we've told ourselves for too long, and it's time to write a new one. There is a quiet tragedy playing out in the lives of so many people, and it isn't failure. It isn't heartbreak. It isn't even loss. It's waiting. Waiting for life to begin, waiting for the right moment, the perfect feeling, the ideal circumstances. We tell ourselves, I'll start when I'm ready, or I'll be happy when things settle, or I'll speak up when I feel more confident. And in the meantime, life moves on without us. We put ourselves on pause. We wait for the storm to pass before we begin to live, not realizing that life is the storm. It's messy. It's unpredictable. It's full of detours. And if you keep waiting for perfect clarity or emotional readiness, you'll wait forever. You'll spend years sitting at the edge of your own existence, watching it pass you by. This is one of the most dangerous illusions we carry, that we have more time, that we'll have another chance, that someday we'll feel strong enough, healed enough, inspired enough to finally show up for ourselves. But the truth is, life doesn't wait for your readiness. It doesn't ask if you're in the mood. It doesn't pause because you're tired or scared. It just keeps unfolding. And either you step into it as you are, or you miss it. What's often underneath this waiting is fear. Fear of not being good enough. Fear of failing. Fear of being seen before we're perfect. So we convince ourselves that we're being responsible by holding back, that it's wise to be cautious, that it's noble to wait until we're stronger. But let's be honest, that's not wisdom. That's self-protection. That's fear dressed in the clothing of strategy. At some point, you have to ask yourself, am I preparing for something that will never come? Because there is no perfect moment. There is no guaranteed outcome. There is only now, this day, this breath, this version of you. And while she may not have it all figured out, she's the only one who can begin. Not the idealized version of you you're waiting to become. Not the healed version of you who no longer flinches at old pain. You, the real, imperfect, a beautifully unfinished you. Right here, right now. One of the great psychological traps we fall into is the belief that action must follow motivation. That we need to feel ready before we do the thing. But in truth, motivation follows action. Not the other way around. When you take one small step, the energy starts to build. Clarity starts to form. Confidence grows from doing, not from waiting. And I say this with deep compassion because I know what it's like to want to hide. To want to disappear until everything feels safe again. But life is not a place you arrive at. It's something you build. In the mess, in the uncertainty, in the unfinished parts. You cannot wait for the fear to leave before you move. You have to move with it. Look around you. How many people are living on autopilot? How many dreams are gathering dust? Not because they weren't possible, but because someone was waiting for a sign. We romanticize the future. We say, one day, I'll start living the life I was meant to live. But when is that day? What has to happen first? And who told you you weren't already in the middle of it? There is a kind of spiritual sleep that happens when you defer your life. You stop feeling, you stop wanting, you stop hoping. You become a bystander in your own story. And the longer you wait, the harder it becomes to remember what it even felt like to want something with your whole heart. Not because your dreams died, but because you stopped feeding them. If you want to wake up, if you want to truly live, you have to stop waiting for the world to give you permission. You have to stop postponing joy, creativity, connection, truth. Start writing the book, start the conversation, make the call, sign up for the class, share your story, try again, be vulnerable, take the risk. Not because you know how it ends, but because you're tired of not beginning. You don't need more time, you need more courage. And yes, there will be fear, there will be rejection, there will be failure, but there will also be growth and clarity. And meaning you might fall, but you will also rise. And in the rising, you will remember that you are not here to survive this life. You are here to live it. So I ask you, with all the urgency and all the love I can offer, what are you waiting for? What part of you is still convinced that life begins later? Because later is not guaranteed. Tomorrow is not promised. All you have is this moment and the choice to use it. There's a silent force that shapes the direction of our lives more than any external event ever could. And that's the mind. Not the world around us, not the circumstances we faced, not even the people we've lost or the battles we fought, but the voice inside our own heads. The internal narrative that speaks to us when the world goes quiet. The one that tells us who we are, what we're worth, and what we're capable of. And here's the truth most people avoid facing. That voice can either be your greatest source of power or the most brutal prison you'll ever live in. We often think of obstacles as things out there, a lack of opportunity, a harsh past, the wrong timing. But more often than not, the biggest obstacle is the one we've built in our minds. The doubts, the shame, the fears that have taken root over the years and now speak so convincingly. We no longer question them. We just live according to their rules. And what are those rules? I'm not good enough. I'll never recover from this. No one would care what I have to say. I'll always be like this. We think we're being realistic when really we're just rehearsing old wounds. We mistake familiarity for truth. But just because a thought is loud doesn't mean it's wise. And just because it's been playing on repeat doesn't mean it's right. The mind is a powerful storyteller. It takes one painful moment and builds an entire identity around it. One rejection becomes a belief that we're unlovable. One failure becomes a narrative that we're incapable. And without realizing it, we begin to live not from truth, but from trauma. Not from who we are, but from who we were when we were hurt. This is why it's not enough to just survive hard things. You have to unlearn the beliefs they left behind. And that takes work. Deep, uncomfortable, honest work. Because the mind doesn't just hold your memories. It holds your interpretations. And your interpretations shape your reality. You could go through the exact same event as someone else, but the story you tell yourself about it will define your outcome. Was it a lesson or a curse? Did it break you or wake you? Are you a victim of life or a participant in it? The answers to those questions don't come from what happened to you. They come from how you've trained your mind to respond. So the real question is, have you trained your mind to support your healing or to sabotage it? Most of us don't even realize how much time we spend in mental autopilot, reacting, not responding, absorbing, not questioning. But the moment you start to witness your own thoughts, really witness them, you begin to reclaim your power. You begin to realize, that voice in my head is not me. It's a voice I've inherited, shaped, rehearsed. But I can change it. You are not powerless against your thoughts. You can challenge them. You can rewrite them, and over time, you can retrain your mind to serve you rather than enslave you. It doesn't mean the negative thoughts disappear overnight. They won't. But you get better at not believing them. You get better at recognizing the difference between a thought and a truth, between fear and intuition, or between your inner critic and your inner compass. There's a line I return to often. Don't believe everything you think. Because the mind is clever, but it's not always wise. And if it's been shaped by years of pain, comparison, perfectionism, or trauma, it will lie to you to keep you safe. Not happy, not fulfilled, just safe. But safety isn't always life-giving. Sometimes the mind keeps you safe inside a cage you've outgrown. So what do? We begin slowly, gently, but with conviction. We begin to observe our thoughts without judgment. We name them. We ask, is this helping me become who I want to be? We choose to replace what is destructive with what is deliberate. We choose to become allies to our own becoming. And yes, it will feel foreign at first. Your mind will resist. Because familiar pain often feels safer than unfamiliar peace. But keep going. Speak to yourself as you would to someone you love. Interrupt the old scripts. Write new ones. This is not about toxic positivity. It's not about pretending everything is fine. It's about reclaiming authorship over your own mind. Because if you don't write the script, your fear will. And you deserve better than that. You've always deserved better than that. You are not weak because your mind plays tricks on you. You are not broken because you have to fight your own thoughts. You are human, and the human mind is both powerful and fragile. But the moment you become conscious of its influence, you gain something priceless: agency. Agency is the ability to choose again, to respond instead of react, to rise instead of retreat. And that choice, made again and again, even in small moments, is what builds a life of freedom.